Okay, today's theological word for the day is the last of the theo words. I promise. The word is theophany. It has to do with physical or visible manifestations of God's presence in the world. It covers a range of things, though not everything you might think. So let's talk about it. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. Theophany is probably not the most important theological term we've discussed, but I think it's interesting stuff to think about and talk about. Rather than start with a general definition and follow up with examples, let me begin with one vivid example of a theophany, and we'll go from there. Some of you went with a group of us from the church last week to see the animated movie The Prince of Egypt, the 1998 animated adaptation of the story of Moses. One of the most beautiful and mysterious scenes in that movie covered a theophany of God, the appearance of God to Moses in the burning bush, or as it should probably be called, the bush that didn't burn, or the illuminated bush, something like that. You know the story, but it never hurts to hear it again, straight from the Bible. Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Then Moses said, "I must turn aside and look at this great sight, and see why the bush is not burned up." When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, "Moses, Moses." And he said, "Here I am." Then he said, "Come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground." He said further, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. This is an example, and perhaps the most vivid one, of a theophany. God appears not in the form of a person, but through the medium of a miraculously non-burning bush. And God speaks audibly. Other examples from the Old Testament include times when, for example, an angel of the Lord appears as a mysterious person. Think the 3 visitors to Abraham's tent who announced that Sarah would bear a son. Think also the mysterious figure who wrestles with Jacob in the night and renames him Israel. In both of these cases, it is clear that it is God himself who has appeared, only in the form of an ordinary person or ordinary people. The story of Abraham's encounter, for example, begins, "The Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing near him." It's God, but it's 3 men. Similarly, after Jacob has wrestled with his mysterious opponent, the man says, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and humans and have prevailed." And afterward Jacob remarks, "I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." There are others, of course. But why is it important? I think it indicates a level of intimacy and concern on the part of God for what happens in this world. In other devotionals, I've talked about divine providence and how it indicates God's ongoing care and concern for us, and I've spoke about God's presence with us in the midst of our suffering. This is a little different. The theophanies of God generally point to a God who is concerned for this world and for all who live in it. It is not a kind of controlling presence. Rather, it is a presence that reminds us that God notices and that God cares. In the cases of Abraham, Jacob, and Moses, it is God's way of setting people on a course of action, on a mission in the world. Scholars debate what counts as a full-on theophany as opposed to either a vision or a dream on the one hand or the incarnation on the other. Sometimes the debates, while mildly interesting, can get a little tedious. I'm not as concerned about whether this or that appearance fits the textbook definition of a theophany. What I'm interested in is that whatever else individual theophanies may mean, they remind us that God is with us, that God notices us, that God guides us, and that God cares about us and about this world we live in. And that's good enough for me. Tomorrow, we'll talk about the doctrine of the Trinity. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.